Hi, this is Tracy Rich from Judaism 101, jewfaq.org. Today I'd like to show you a couple of things about latke making that are hard to explain with just words or photographs. Latkes are the traditional Ashkenazic treat for the holiday of Hanukkah, and are also eaten at other times. You can find my recipe for latke batter on my website. Just search for latke, L-A-T-K-E, and click the link to the Hanukkah page. Let's start by forming the latkes. There's no right or wrong size for this. You want them to be large enough that they'll be soft on the inside, but not so thick that the outsides will burn before the inside is done cooking. These latkes are a little larger than I usually make them, but they're not too large. At this size, you'll get 8 or 9 latkes out of my batter recipe, and about 4 of them will fit in a 12-inch frying pan. Now, I usually make them a little bit smaller, small enough to get about 10 or 12 out of the batter, and fit about 6 of them in the pan with 5 around the outside and 1 in the middle. Now, before you get started, you'll want to have a place prepared to drain the excess oil from the latkes. I usually put down a paper grocery bag, which protects the counter without putting oil back on the latkes. I put a couple layers of paper towels on top of that. Then you'll want to prepare the oil. Now, I'm using canola oil, but you can use pretty much any cooking oil. You should put enough oil in the frying pan that it's going to be a little bit shallower than the thickness of the latkes. You don't want to cover the latkes with oil while they're cooking. This isn't deep frying. Then you want to heat the oil to its cooking temperature. Now, on my stove, that's usually somewhere between medium and medium-high, but yours may vary. If the oil's too hot, the outside of the latke may overcook while the inside undercooks. If it's not hot enough, the latkes will take too long to cook and they may absorb more oil and get too greasy. You can drop a pinch of batter into the oil to test the temperature. The oil should be hot enough that the batter bubbles vigorously when you put a bit of it in, but not so hot that it starts smoking or spattering. After you test the oil, you want to get that sample batter out because it'll burn and that burnt taste will get into the latkes. You want to have a batch of latkes formed and ready to go before you put any of them in the oil, because you want to be able to put them in the oil very close to the same time. If you take more time between adding latkes to the oil will cool, and that changes the cooking speed. Once you've got the latkes in the oil, now comes the hard part, waiting for them to cook. You need to be patient. It's going to take longer than you expect, and it's very tempting to flip them too early. And then you flip them repeatedly until they're done. Or you check them repeatedly, or keep picking them up. Don't do that, because when you do that, it just doesn't cook right. Now, the best sign of when they're ready to flip is actually the bubbling of the oil. You saw when they went in, it was bubbling very vigorously, and now it's slowing down. Let's skip ahead to the point where it's almost ready to flip. And now you can see that the oil is bubbling very slowly. Now we're going to flip the first one.
It's not very vigorous over here.
That's just about right. I could have let it go a little bit longer. You'll notice that the oil bubbles very vigorously after I flip it because now it's cooking the bottom side. Now that flipping has cooled the oil a little bit, so the others are going to take a little bit longer before they're ready to flip. Now, if you flip one over and you realize it's really not ready, that's okay. Just leave it. Make sure you cook the other side completely, and then when that side's done, you can maybe flip it back for a little bit longer, but try not to flip them more than twice, because the more you flip it, you're going to start overcooking the outside without really cooking the inside properly. Once all 4 of them are flipped, now you're ready to wait again. Wait for the bubbling to slow down on the other side. And this one should be a little bit quicker. It takes a little less time to cook the second side than it does the first side. Once they're done and you take them out of the oil, you might want to gently shake them to get rid of a bit of the excess oil. Be especially gentle on the upward stroke because you don't want to spray oil around the room. You just want to force on the downward stroke to put the oil back into the pan. And once you've shaken them out, then you can put them on the paper towels that are on the shopping bag that we prepared at the beginning. Don't put any more latkes in the oil until the entire batch is out. Every time you add a latke, you're cooling the oil, which is going to slow down the cooking of the remaining ones. So just be patient and wait until all of the first batch are done before you try to put any of the second batch in. After you've got the first batch out, try and get rid of any little breakaway pieces that might be floating in the oil before you put the next batch in. Those pieces might burn, and that burnt taste gets into the latkes, so you don't want that. If the oil is getting shallow, you might want to add a bit more oil at this point between the batches. Then leave the oil alone for a little bit while it gets back up to temperature. You can use that time to form your next batch of latkes. And that's how you make latkes. Thanks for joining me.